The history of the sword began long before the appearance of metal. The first prototypes were made of stone, bone, and wood. These objects were not swords in the modern sense, but they already served the same purpose. Humans sought to create a weapon that combined reach and control. The spear depended too much on distance, while the club required full close contact. Thus the idea of a long cutting weapon for close combat emerged. The transition to the Bronze Age was a revolution in the history of weaponry. Bronze allowed the creation of thinner and sharper blades. However, bronze swords were fragile and bent easily. Their length rarely exceeded 60 centimeters. Most bronze swords were designed for thrusting attacks. This was due to the material's poor resistance to lateral stress. Even then, the first blade shape standards appeared. The center of gravity was shifted closer to the hilt. This made the weapon easier to control. Hilts were often cast together with the blade. This increased durability but made repairs more difficult. Archaeologists find bronze swords in the graves of warriors and chieftains. This indicates the high social status of the weapon. Even in ancient times, swords were believed to possess sacred qualities. Some blades were deliberately broken before burial. It was believed that this allowed the weapon to pass into the spirit world. These beliefs shaped humanity's special attitude toward the sword for millennia. The discovery of iron radically changed warfare. Iron was more accessible and more abundant than bronze. However, early iron swords were inferior in quality. This was due to low smelting temperatures in early furnaces. The blades were soft and dulled quickly. Over time, blacksmiths learned to enrich iron with carbon. Thus steel was born. Steel swords became stronger and sharper. They held an edge better and withstood heavy blows. During this period, the classic straight sword took shape. It was used for both cutting and thrusting attacks. Blade length increased to 8,090 centimeters. The sword became a universal infantry weapon. A distinction emerged between combat and ceremonial swords. Combat blades were simpler and more practical. Ceremonial swords were decorated with engravings and precious metals. In ancient Rome, the gladius appeared. This short sword was ideal for formation fighting. Legionaries used it in dense battle lines. A strike with the gladius was fast and deadly. Later, it was replaced by the spada. The spada was longer and better suited for cavalry. This shows how tactics influenced sword design. Every change in blade shape reflected real battlefield needs. The sword firmly established itself as the warrior's primary personal weapon. The Middle Ages became the golden age of the sword. The development of armor required new blade designs. Early medieval swords were wide and heavy. They were effective against poorly protected opponents. With the appearance of chain mail, combat techniques changed. Strikes became more precise and targeted. Swords with pronounced points appeared. They were better at piercing armor. Later, hand-and-a-half swords emerged. They could be wielded with one or two hands. This provided greater flexibility in combat. Two-handed swords were used against dense formations. Their length could exceed a person's height. Such swords required immense physical strength. They were not carried constantly and were used situationally. Regional sword forms developed in parallel. Straight blades dominated in Europe. Curved swords evolved in East Asia. Blade shape depended on striking technique. Curved swords cut better in motion. Straight swords were more effective for thrusting. Hilts became more complex and gained guards. The guard protected the hand from enemy blades. This increased the fighter's survivability. Sword balance became a matter of precise calculation. A good sword felt like an extension of the hand. Masters passed down forging secrets through generations. Blade quality directly affected the outcome of battle. The sword became the pinnacle of blacksmithing. It united science, craftsmanship, and war. The emergence of firearms changed everything. The sword gradually lost its importance on the battlefield. However, it did not disappear completely. The rapier became the weapon of duels. It was light and fast. The primary emphasis was on thrusting. The saber became widespread in cavalry. Its curved blade was ideal for cutting while moving. Sabers were used until the 19th century. Swords became part of military uniforms. They symbolized rank and honor. During this period, blades became thinner. Balance shifted toward speed. Fencing evolved into a separate art. Combat techniques became more sporting in nature. The sword moved from war into culture. It survived in rituals and traditions. Today, the sword is no longer a weapon of war. It has become an object of study and collecting. Historical blades are researched by scholars. Steel analysis reveals the technologies of the past. Modern craftsmen recreate ancient forging methods. Sword replicas are used in historical reenactments. Sport fencing preserves the legacy of bladed combat. And that's all for today. Subscribe to the channel, and see you next time.